when I showed her the numbers of taking that first and second and putting it into an all-in-one or a first lien HELOC, it cut the payoff period on that from 20 years down to less than 7 years. And, we can fall over when we hear that. But the fact is, it's just math.
Yeah, I mean, that 260% increase of interest is insane.
I think that becoming my own bank is probably the most exciting thing that I've run across here in years. Then you're talking about buying another property with your equity in your property and not having to take on another mortgage. So when I think HELOC, a lot of people kind of shut down because they're like, Dave Ramsey told us not to use a HELOC, And so I kind of look at it as a way to, like you said, build your wealth with the acquisition of new properties or funding these infinite policies or another investment that you may have, an idea for. The point is that it just makes the equity available for you to be able to use rather than it to be tied up in something that you have to go get a loan to borrow for. I mean, when people figure that out, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, getting people to understand that the mortgage interest, the way it's calculated, is so different from the line of credit to the point that if you're able to use the line at revolving with your income going in, your expenses coming out, we're talking about maybe 2 decades less in paying off your mortgage. I mean, people, are you hearing what I'm saying? Because you're talking about the recast, you're talking about, these other things to do with the mortgage, but I'm talking about coming away from a loan that most people think we have to buy a home, which you're getting ready to tell us, Harrison, that you don't even have to ever move into the mortgage, that you can go straight into the line of credit. But if we can bring people's thought process to, wait a minute, I don't have to have a mortgage. I don't have to have a 20 or 30-year payoff period. I can have the 5 to 10-year payoff period. So talking about just the mindset that you deal with people and that feeling that, well, this is more insecure than the mortgage. What do you tell people when you run across that? Because I hear that every day. Well, I don't want to do that. I'm going to stay in the mortgage because it's safer. How do you feel about that?
So I love this question because I like to understand what they mean by safer. Is safer the fact that their payment isn't going to change and that they can recognize that whether it's month 1 or 121, that what they spend every month is the same? Or is safer the amount of interest you spend? The crazy thing is that at about this, and this isn't exact, but at about a 2.75% interest rate, you spend 50% of what you have borrowed in interest. At about 5.5% in interest, you spend 100% of what you borrow in interest. So rates currently are not at 5.5%. They're around the mid to high 6 range. So you're spending well over 120, 130% in interest. If somebody has a $400,000 balance on their home and they're at a 5.5 or 6% in interest, they're going to spend at least $400,000 up to maybe $500,000 in interest. So is the risk that you're experiencing because it's a safe payment, I feel less risky? Or is the risk that you're experiencing really going to be, I'm spending $500,000 as opposed to maybe spending $200,000 if I changed the product or the vehicle I'm using? In my opinion, the risk is what is coming out of my pocket to feed the person's, the bank's life at the end of the day. My opinion is that 30-year mortgages for the right people are more risky. In some instances, some people have no choice. I'm buying my first home. I'm putting 3 or 3.5% down. Good. Get into the home. Build your generational wealth that way by allowing for it to appreciate, put some elbow grease into it. once you are ready to sell and you're at that next stage of life, you've built up enough money, your income has changed, you can change the vehicle you're going into and you can purchase a home in this product. You don't just have to refi into it, like you said. But risk is really a determinant on, well, what do you consider as risky? Is it the interest spent, or is it the fact that I have a number on a piece of paper that's lower than this other number? However, the money that I'm spending, the thing that I'm working for, is much higher than in a 30-year mortgage than it would be in potentially this first lien HELOC.
A lot of people feel like it's safer. The mortgage is safer because the HELOC has the variable interest rate, or that, the HELOC, well, they might decide to call that or, freeze it. How do you feel about that?
And are you talking about freezing the line of credit? I mean, I think that back in the day when we had that major recession and those second lien HELOCs, which are typically considered riskier because it's an additional line of credit on top of a balance on the home. It's a big credit card, which is why you usually see those interest rates higher. And that's mainly because the person has already had a low loan balance, their value's gone up. Now they're taking advantage of money that they may have never put into the product. Whereas with the all-in-one and these first lien HELOCs, you're paying that balance down. It's your checking account. So they're not taking away your checking account. Now, with that being said, that does not mean that in some instances they could perhaps say, hey, what's happening if you had $500,000 of available equity in your home, and month over month, you're slowly pulling it out and you haven't made a single deposit for 3 or 4 years, you can assure yourself you're going to get a phone call and say, hey, is everything okay? Are you all right? Are you alive?
Right.
Which you would also want to have happen. You want the people on the other side of the coin to at least make sure that you're okay, everything's all right, work with you and build the game plan to get you on the right path again.
But we have a question. And he says, I believe we just touched this just a little bit. He says, can you purchase a home with the all-in-one or first lien HELOC?
Yes, you certainly can purchase it in that. Now, certain states have certain levels of requirements. For the most part, we like to say, hey, we want you to have 20% down. Now, there are 10% down options. Personally, I think that because you're doing less than 20% down, there are some increased expenses.